We open to the words biotemporal chamber, so I already know I'm going to hate this because it's a time travel episode. Still, we're here now, so let's just get on with it. We're lying on a bed in sick bay watching a kid and a woman we don't recognize, and a significantly more follicled doctor. He tells the others to leave after the woman says the patient is her mother, and they depart whilst Harry Doc tells us we're a great friend before ordering someone to start that temporal thing he mentioned. The screen whites out, and now that kid is bringing a present to the patient, who we discover is Grandma Kez. Grandma Kez doesn't know what the shit's going on, causing grandson to call for Harry Doc, who he refers to as Dr. Van Gogh, so I'm glad to see the plot element of his name has been swiftly and satisfyingly concluded. Harry Doc comes over, and we establish that Grandma Kez doesn't recognize him, or sickbay either. Tangentially, that's a fairly convincing hairpiece. I can understand why Shatner kept nicking the ones they bought for him. Anywho, she says the only thing she can remember is being put inside a big tube, and him referring to it as the biotemporal chamber, causing some confusion from Harry Doc as, although he's discussed it, it isn't ready to use yet. Looks like we're experiencing time reversal in this one, which is at least a more interesting way of doing something I don't care for. Harry Doc sends grandson to fetch the rest of Grandma Kez's family, whilst Captain Chakotay comes to visit, so he got that promotion from Coda in the end after all. Harry Doc updates him on Grandma Kez, saying 99% of her memories are buggered, whilst also dropping the data that she's 9 years old now. We don't have detailed information on Akampa biology, so Harry Doc's not sure if this is a normal part of what he calls morologium, which I'm guessing is basically Akampan death puberty. He thinks the biotemporal chamber could give her maybe another year, but is interrupted by Grandma Kez saying she's cold. Unsurprising, as her whole body has dropped 2 degrees, something Harry Doc is confused by, as that's consistent with already being in the chamber, and the screen fades to white once more. Grandma Kez wakes in her bed. She grabs a photo frame on her nightstand to show us a picture of her with a baby, though she doesn't exactly look delighted. We hear voices from the other room and investigate, discovering that daughter and grandson are here, but Kez can only remember grandson from her time in the scenes we've already watched. Daughter sends grandson to find his father and grandfather, leaving me with somewhat of a naming dilemma, but we'll see how this plays out before we make a decision. Daughter takes Grandma Kez to sickbay, where Harry Doc mentions morologium again, though this is the first time for him, I guess, and we confirm it's basically what I suspected, rapid onset aging with associated memory loss. It's not all bad news though, as it means she doesn't remember being married to Paris, and I can only imagine what a blessing that must be. Harry Doc informs husband Paris about a new treatment he's developing, that biotemporal gizmo we keep hearing about. Essentially, he wants to rewind her cells, and I suggest we leave the science of that one well alone. Daughter argues that Grandma Kez wouldn't want this, saying she'd always accepted her limited time frame. Husband Paris argues in favour of treatment, and Kim, who appears to be daughter's partner, agrees he'd do the same if it was her. Tangentially, this leaves us in the position of Paris being Kim's father-in-law. Of all the possible situations I'd considered where Kim calls Paris daddy, this did not feature among them. We're all told to shut up by Grandma Kez herself, who comes into the office and wants to know why she remembers things that haven't happened yet. Harry Doc dismisses these as delusions, but Grandma Kez pisses on that. Grandson supports her, saying we should listen to what she has to say. The story has other plans though, and the onset of that temperature drop again heralds another jump back in time. It's Grandma Kez's 9th birthday party, and a uniformed Neelix brings out a cake. Despite initial confusion, it looks like she's worked out what's happening and plays along, blowing out the candles. A point to the writers here for Neelix commenting on it being good to see her lung is still working, a reference to her having donated one to him. After a quick chat with grandson where she tries to mine him for information without raising concern, Harry Doc pops over for a chat. She reveals to him what's been happening to her, describing her experiences so far. A mention of the biotemporal thingy convinces him, as he only thought it up this morning and hadn't told anyone. To sickbay then for a bit of scanning. The good news is that, with each jump, the percentage of lost memories seems to be shrinking and now stands at only 95%, so we're 4% better off than when we started the show. We throw around some ideas, with Harry Doc providing the most interesting one by suggesting her psychic shenanigans might have morphed into a form of precognition. While Captain Chakotay and husband Paris scan for time wibblies, Grand Marquez is going to check the logs of her life to see if she can find anything of use. Back in her quarters later on, Grand Marquez is talking to husband Paris. Between his attempts to reminisce, she asks about a radiation dose she received. Husband Paris tells her that was during the Year of Hell while they were under attack by the Krenim, which rings a bell, so I guess we're foreshadowing. He says that was when they lost Janeway, B'Elanna and Lieutenant Brokennose. It seems that's also when they hooked up, with hints made about Paris and B'Elanna too. Anywho, husband Paris mentions something called a chronoton torpedo, and how that's what caused her radiation poisoning. This time radiation may be connected to the shit she's experiencing now, so we go off to see Harry Doc and explain. A touch of the chills means we never get there. The latest, or perhaps that should be earliest, rewind brings us back to the picture of Grand Marquez with her newly born grandson. A point to the writers here for the rather neat incidental twist of this being why she looked a bit off in the photo. Grand Marquez passes off the baby and drags husband Paris to see Harry Doc. A little chat later and we draw the conclusion that his biotemporal gizmo reactivated the latent time radiation in Grand Marquez. Harry Doc tells us we can fix things by purging the time radiation from her system, but we'd need to know precisely what flavour of time radiation it was to do that. Which is a problem, because Voyager's scanners were proper bollocks when it hit, so we don't have that information. Oh, and if we can't fix this, Grand Marquez might keep jumping back until she doesn't exist. Tangentially, if the jumps are caused by the radiation, then surely the rearmost limit of those jumps would be the point where she was first exposed to that radiation, meaning the first Krenim attack. That doesn't sound as dangerous as turning into an accompanied sperm though, so let's ignore it for now. Grand Marquez is talking to daughter in what looks like a new set with extra flashy lights, so I imagine we'll see more of that in the future. Harry Doc arrives and says he might have an idea to stop the jumps. To sickbay, where he places her behind a special time force field. Husband Paris arrives and we have a little chat, during which he expresses surprise when Harry Doc is referred to by her as Dr. Van Gogh. He was under the impression that Harry Doc had decided on Dr. Mozart, but I'm sure the plot element of his name will be swiftly and satisfyingly concluded. The good news for Grand Marquez keeps on coming as, along with it being a potential solution, the time force field also prevents husband Paris from entering it. Instead, he sits and tells her about their history/future, depending on your point of view. Not for long, though, as they're interrupted by daughter saying she may have something, who's then interrupted in turn by an alarm on a console. Grand Marquez's temperature is dropping, so Harry Doc pops in and gives her some warm-up drugs. That fails and she starts to fade, while husband Paris shouts a little and looks like he's taking a difficult shit. This rewind results in me needing to change Grand Marquez's name to Mummykez, as apparently this is the day daughter arrives. Slight problem, we're in a shuttle coming back from visiting the local alien Tesco, and Voyager is under attack. We dock and are greeted by Neelix. Mummykez explains what's been going on, but there's an additional slight problem. The doc, we're unsure if he's Harry yet, is currently out of order, so getting treatment is going to be a bit of a bugger. Oh, and loads of other stuff is buggered too, which means we can't do that time force field either. Things are so bad that Captain Chakotay says they only have life support on 3 out of 14 decks, and, in her shoes, I'd be more concerned about the captain not knowing Voyager has 15 decks. Regardless, her options for a solution are rather limited. It doesn't really matter though, as another cold snap means she's about to leave anyway. It seems Voyager's doing a bit better this time round, as she's on the holodeck. She finds Paris and tries to explain, only to be interrupted by an alive B'Elanna, who kisses him, which is why I removed the husband prefix by the way. Kez tries to explain again, and our interruption this time is the ship shaking and a call from an alive Janeway telling everybody that we're at red alert. A ship that looks a bit like a cock and balls fires white stuff out of the end at Voyager, penetrating their shields, and I refuse to believe that this image is unintended. Kez arrives on the bridge and explains that they're being attacked by people with time fireworks, which is why they're getting through. Janeway and B'Elanna try to do some science at a console, only for it to kaboom at them, killing them both. Kez is able to help newly promoted Captain Chakotay by telling him about a scanner thingy they were doing on her last jump. This lets them shoot the white stuff launcher on the dig ship, exploding the tip. Voyager may have won, but they took a beating in the process, including a time firework being lodged in a Jeffries tube. Looks like it's the one that started all of this, so despite the damage and danger, Kez is going to poke it with the tricorder. Some crawling and scanning later, and she's found the flavour of time radiation it's spitting out, before collapsing as we rewind time once more. We're in sickbay, and a distinctly less hairy doctor is confused when Kez starts yammering about time radiation flavours. We shift to the briefing room where Kez explains everything to senior staff. After the lecture, B'Elanna jumps in and explains that, as she's moving backwards through time, she's already been exposed to the time radiation stuff. Whilst not particularly satisfying, we have at least addressed the hole I mentioned, so we give a point to the writers for the effort. We're told this is also the solution to her problem, as we can still use the data she gathered to shoot her full of the opposite time radiation flavour and keep her here. Before we do, Kez tells Janeway about the Krenim and that she must avoid them at all costs, which sets up all manner of causality issues and probably pisses off our old mate Captain Braxton, but fuck that guy. To sick bay, where we stick Kez in the much-referenced biotemporal chamber. We do some science and it looks like it's working. Until it isn't. We're in Janeway's quarters, where Neelix is explaining that he'd make a great cook and should join them. Kez interrupts and starts talking about time radiation. Not for long, though. Well, this is a problem. Child Kez tries explaining to her dad that in 9 years she'll be on a starship where she'll get time radiation. She knows the flavour so they can fix it, but they've got to be quick. That explanation goes about as well as you'd expect, and then we jump again. Kez's mum is squeezing Kez out of her back womb. Baby Kez tries to let them know that the temporal variance of the chronoton torpedo is 1.47 microseconds, but all that comes out is wah, wah, which is far from ideal. Another jump and she's a fetus, then a seahorse, then a pair of Brussels sprouts, before the screen fades to black. Then time starts playing normally again because reasons, and the process is reversed. Kez is born again and, even in baby form, seems to express that this turn of events is utter bobbins. Flash forward and Kez is in the biotemporal thingy again because reasons. The time radiation is purged and she's fine. We all have a party where Kez takes the smart choice and doesn't tell anybody about their possible futures, though she is asked to write a report about the Krenim, so goes off to do that as we fly away. There's a certain irony in the fact that I keep having to repeat how much I don't care for time travel plots. To be fair, this one at least shows us some interesting things by providing glimpses of a maybe future. In fact, you could argue that the central premise exists only for the purpose of a Where Are They Now episode of Voyager. It serves best perhaps as an interesting glimpse of what the show could have provided had it not been forced into the episodic pigeonhole. Imagine Voyager written with whole seasons in mind, where each episode had little touches of what's coming scattered within. I understand the business logic for why this didn't happen back then, and the tectonic shifts in viewing habits since the 90s that make such shows more viable now, but I still think Voyager was perhaps the Trek series most suitable for a slow burn approach. Has it changed my opinion of time travel plots? Still, no. And that ending was pointless filler which ignored the established premise of the time travel mechanics. But it's not entirely without value, and that, I suppose, counts for something. End of episode.
Hi, I'm Captain Braxton. You may remember me from such scenes as shooting at Voyager and insane homeless guy stereotype. I come from a future where all YouTube videos are well written, informative, and have high production values. But don't worry, cause you can save us from this nightmare dystopia by funding more utter dog shit like the one you just watched. For as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/USS Pedant, you can help make sure that some clown with zero professional knowledge makes videos with the word fuck in them. If that sounds good to you, click the link that's on the screen here somewhere probably. I don't know, I'm from the goddamn future. None of this makes any sense to me. Hell, I don't even know what money is.